everybody. Got a few last people trickling in. Go ahead and take a seat, and if you still have a seat next to you that is open, raise your hand. No? People can come huddle up here if you'd like. Good morning, my name's Julie Caffey, and I'm the Assistant Director of Fine Arts, and I'm joined by my colleague Andrew Linden, the Director of Fine Arts, and also Steve Beal, the President, and Melanie Korn, the Provost, and welcoming you here for Painting Expanded. This is part of a series of recent symposia that the Fine Arts Division has hosted in recent years, beginning with Craft Forward, and last year Remodeled, which spoke about the nature of sculpture and where we are now with sculpture. And here we are with Painting Expanded. We just really want to welcome our esteemed colleagues and students for this conversation. We just really hope that today will be a spark for important conversations that are going to be happening today and in the time to come. I've got a couple of housekeeping things. If you don't know, the bathrooms are right out here in the hall. For lunch, you can buy your own lunch in the nave. We've got Onagili, who will be serving sushi, and Alicia's, who will be serving tamales. And if you want to go somewhere in the neighborhood, you can do that. They appreciate cash there because they're from La Cucina Kitchen. Also, we hope you'll join us at the end of the day for our closing reception at Kansas Street, 350 Kansas Street. That's at 4:30 today. I want to make an announcement that upcoming this Wednesday, April 17th, there'll be the Curatorial Practices Program is opening their exhibition at the WADA space with Etel Adnan, his paintings. There'll also be an open crit here upstairs in the drawing space on April 17th from 5 to 7, so you can jog from one event to the other. And please check our website for the upcoming MFA exhibitions and all the other symposium lectures that are coming up here on campus. I want to invite you to turn your phones off now. Very good. And now I'd like to welcome to the podium James Gobel.
Thank you, Julie. We'd like to start with our thank yous. This has been a 6-month love of labor for Linda, Geary, and I. We'd like to thank our president, Steve Beal, Provost Melanie Korn, directors Andrew Linden and Julie Caffey. Thank you. The enormous assistance of Ace Lehner, Serena Cole, and Sarah Hodgkiss, who have been the kind of on the ground making all of this happen today. Applause to them. We're really excited. And again, Serena Cole curated an exhibition that is at the after reception next to the WADIS at that event space. So we're excited about that as well. We'd also like to thank our graduate director, Maria Porges, Valerie Wade at Crown Point Press, Gina Basso at SF MoMA, and our faculty members, Kim Anno, Jordan Cantor, and John Zurier, who will be moderators on today's panel. And yeah, thank you. And I introduce my partner, Linda Geary.
Hi, everyone. Hi. So James and I hope to create a symposium that could delve into some of our deepest held beliefs and questions about contemporary painting, issues of material, context, and theory, as well as variations in academic culture, writing, and criticism. And also the market. We also wanted to create a series of discussions that would provide a social and historical framework and commentary that would link the artist's practices with everyday life. The artists here were selected because of their work, first and foremost. There's no overarching theme to this symposium other than to expand on painting. Rather than project our own topics onto the artists, we asked them to create a presentation that reflects what they're thinking about now. Each artist ran with the idea and creating the symposium that we have today. So what we have here is a series of 10 vignettes, and we're going to have the first 5 happen in the next hour, followed by a panel discussion, which will be an hour, and then there will be Q&A after that, and then lunch. And then we'll do the same thing in the afternoon. So let's get started. Thanks.
So this is going to be a pretty fast speed round of artist presentations today. So bear in mind, every moment counts. Our first presenter, Tom LADUKE's work focuses on the boundaries of visual recognition and the region between perception and the reality. His paintings and sculpture source from popular films, art history, and the artist studio. Tom was featured in the 2002 California Biennial. His work is in numerous collections, including the Guggenheim in New York, the Museum of Contemporary Art in Los Angeles. He is represented by CRG Gallery in New York and Angles Gallery in Los Angeles. Please welcome Tom LADUKE.
Hi. This is going to be, we have to go real fast. There's 2 reasons I'm showing this first slide. There's a bunch of artists in the room. I can smell you. And so I think all of us sort of know maybe how this feels like months into trying to figure something out, like mostly where you are. It's a fucking disaster. And so the second reason is a friend of mine said, you're going to be nervous, so show the most embarrassing slide. To start off with, I was reminded this morning this is my second most embarrassing slide. So anyway, okay. So using this as a Martin Boyce piece from 1999, I think. But I think the overall sort of subject matter in what I'm doing and maybe what people are doing is questioning, even if there is painting or art. I mean, like, how do you look at something when you already sort of know what it is before you see it? I think that puts everything in question. And this, it's kind of a marvelous example of that, where it's read, I guess, like traditionally as a painting would be read, but the lyrics in it sort of bring you to this here space, which also reminded me, of this. I know this is a map of some place in Italy. It doesn't matter. Any place you go in the world where there's a directory or a map of where you are, it says you are here. And if you go to these places, you notice that you are here is almost always worn down, because people have the tendency to want to touch to see where they are. It closes this circuit. So the here in both of those things are sort of the same place, where you either disappear or you show up, but in some ways it's the same thing. There's a piece that I made like in 2001. It's a very small little painting. There used to be a parking lot at Disneyland next to where I used to live, and it was an interesting place to go because doing something as innocuous seeming as doing a drawing or something, I pulled in this parking lot in the back of my truck and started drawing it, and the Mickey police like circled like a shark. It was really weird. It's hard to take a guy seriously when he's angry at you, but he's wearing spats. But anyway, so they don't want you to sit out in the parking lot. So anyway, this is a picture of Happy. That's the title of the piece, and that also sort of this location. It's a it's like don't lose your car kind of thing, but it's sort of more than that, and it's funny that it's called Happy. This is a Charles Ray piece. This amazing sculpture that also sort of exemplifies this thing of location. This is in space down in LA. And so as you approach this sculpture, you can tell there's something sort of wrong with it. There's like something weird with the scale. You can't quite figure it out. And you sort of are disappearing as you're getting closer to it, like because the scale sort of messes with your perception of the thing. But the funny thing is when you step back and you notice, when you see the piece when someone else is looking at it, this is a friend of mine, it's like people can't, unconsciously they take the same sort of gesture as the negative reality of the, anyway, so, and it happened like time after time, so I took quite a few photographs of people like assuming the position or whatever, so it's like an equal disappearance, but it's a really brilliant piece. I love this. This is good acting. Right here. Oh. Yeah, so Kubrick. Yes, so anyway, beautifully put together. It's also like, I think how it is, at least this is how it is for me. I mean, I'm this idiot right here. And like really trying to figure out, like with all the stuff that's around me, like how to make where I am. And so for him to show that sort of flashback that he got the knowledge of what it is, like from the future, but also it happened the day before. I mean, that's basically what it is. And so questioning like this sort of the sequence of reality is part of what I'm doing too, and I think part of what we're doing. This is a plastic bag. So you see these things like floating all around like every city, I think probably in the world. And I had this sort of identification with this. When I was a kid, like that's what like hobos would have or whatever to like carry their booze or pornography or whatever around in. So so I was noticing these bags floating around the city, and that funny thing happened with it. I knew I wanted to sort of make one of these bags, and so I was driving around the city, and I saw one of them. I slowed down, and the bag sort of turned direction, which I thought was weird. So I slowed down some more, and it started coming at my car, and so I stopped, and it kept coming at the car, and as it approached, I opened the door, and the bag came in. And so it's like, oh, I guess this is what I'm supposed to be. So basically it took place whenever that person left that there or whatever, and it like sort of chased me down. So this is kind of how it goes, because all the suffering that leads you to lying on the floor crying is sort of, you have to do it to like let the thing in the future come and get you. I think that's how it goes. So I made this plastic bag. It's not plastic, it's graphite and super glue, or CA, and it's made out of graphite because well, it's for a bunch of reasons, but inside star bodies are both diamonds and graphite. So carbon is the thing that brings those two together. But I also wanted to make this tombstone for myself, and so I recognized myself in the plastic bag. Sounds kind of weird, but so okay, so there it is from the top, and along the bottom there you see some text, and that's usually where the recycling information is. But it's got my birth and death dates, and so that sounds funny. There's my penis too on the left there. So it's like all these. I'm sorry. There's all these different sort of forms of like recycling, like systems spinning around systems that are unaware of each other. So March 29th, I was born in '63 on April 2nd, but on March 29th, my dad died, and so we were registering his book in the Bible. We're not atheists, but somehow there was this Bible in the house, and in the back of it was all the registries, and so birth and death dates, and so we wrote our dad's name in the thing and realized there was March 29th came up like 10 times all the way back to like 1790 or something like that. It's so weird. So I know when I'm going to die. I just don't know which year. So I put that on there. And the recycling logo is in reverse. It's like sort of like eddies in time. That's the way I'm looking at it. And so okay. So if you look down the end of the bag, you see this constellation of stars, which is Pyxis. And so I was born April 2nd and died March. Will die March 29th, and so in that segment, it's like Pyxis is rising like for all eternity, and so like my dad and his dad and my great uncle and like back and back and back, that Pyxis was rising at the same time, sort of unknown to them, and so I think that's like a very specific location too, the one that you're unaware of. It's like marks that they're doing it because they're in it or whatever that is. So if you look down inside this bag, this was surprising to me. It's as if you're looking a few feet past the object to see this thing, because it's actually a bicycle mirror that's deep inside the bag that's reflecting some holes that are cut in the top of the bag in reverse, so it makes it Pyxis anyway. So that's what that piece is about. Okay, so this is called The Substitute Teacher. I was the whole time I was looking for a way to both paint and sculpt at the same time, and so this kind of, it's like kids' clay. You can get it any place. When you stack colors together and you use a tool, you can move through it as if you're making a paint stroke, but it also is, it's sculpting, but it's like separating the colors. It's beautiful because you couldn't do like the real delicate feathers in any other way. You couldn't paint them overhand. That's all bullshit. So I was really trying to get it so that it's not the object that it looks like, but it is an actual object in reality, which is sort of this other location. So it's all entirely made out of clay. So if you cut this in half, you'd see like guts and, anyways, whatever. So what the piece is about is, when I was 13, I lived in New Hampshire, and I had my brother's gun. I'll talk about my brother later. I had this pump gun that was his that he let me have, and it was kind of busted up, but so you'd have to pump it up like 70 times to make it lethal to kill something. And I know, it's awful, and like as you're a 13-year-old boy, sorry about this, but you want to kill things. And so New Hampshire is like plenty of things to kill, and my uncle said, if you must kill something, which I know you will, kill a red squirrel because they eat the barn. So I basically had my assignment, and so I walked out into the forest with the pumped up gun, saw a red squirrel and shot it, and as it dropped down to the ground, I thought, now I am a man. And so I walked up to it, but it wasn't dead. It was struggling like in a very sort of awful, painful way. So I instantly started crying and trying to pump that gun up again, because I realized that the only way to stop this is to kill it. So I pumped it up, and my adrenaline's like way too high, of course, and so I got to about 50. So I aimed again, and I shot it, and it got so many times worse because it started to scream. And I didn't realize that squirrels screamed, but they do. And so I dropped the gun, tried to find someone. Nobody was around. By the time I came back, it had been just only drag marks left, so some animal had gotten it. So substitute teacher is kind of like me thinking what it was like to sort of change over this from what I was to what I am, and it certainly was, but anyway, that's what that piece is about. This is called Flemish Veil. This is not called Flemish Veil, I'm sorry, this is the source material for this piece. So like anything else, like the reason to go to Disneyland is to look at all the things you're not supposed to. Oh, shit. So, okay. So anyway, the veil is the cracks in the painting. So it's made from what she doesn't have, which is eyebrows and eyelashes. And so it's made from my eyebrows and eyelashes. So that was disturbing to pluck all that out. But here's what it looks like from the side. We used to hang inside of a plexi box, so you can see both sides of the viewer and the maker. This is my brother Geary, and this is a painting about him. This is his apartment building. Oh God, I'm never going to finish the story. But so it's called accidental gunshot. So he'd come home one night. He was a bartender, kind of fucked up all the time. So he was both drunk and high. So he was really paranoid, and he had this gun. So he was doing that taxi driver thing, like in his reflection. But he forgot that he had loaded the gun and went off and made a hole in the window out to the other complexes. And he thought he killed someone because like 2 minutes after that, this police helicopter pulled over. All night long, it was like circling. So he thought for sure he was getting going to get arrested. Of course, it was a totally unrelated thing. It didn't go anyplace. But the reason I show it is because he doesn't know I made this painting, nor does he know that I talk about it in public. And so that what you're sort of experiencing and me like doing that too is also this sort of location that's got to do with the things I was talking about to begin with. There's no way I'm going to get that's 10 minutes. So I'll just go through these slides really fast. So this is a painting. This is my studio as a starship. It's got to do with that painting. The way I figured out how to make this painting is by chewing this thing, and there it is. And there's that, and there's a deer that I made, and so there's reflecting, and so anyway, and that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. That was wonderful. That was really great. Let that be a lesson to you. Our next presenter is Leisha Dolriccio. Leisha Dolriccio received her BFA from Rhode Island School of Design in 1994 and her MFA from Art Center in 2001. She has had her work shown extensively in group exhibitions throughout the United States and Europe, including the 2004 Whitney Biennial. Leisha's mixed media construction of cardboard, tape, gouache, paper, vellum, and vellum are flat but multi-layered fields of manually manipulated patterns and forms. Made by recycling materials from her own practice, her work is the collection. Her work is in the collection of the Museum of Contemporary Art in Los Angeles, the Walker Center, the Hammer Museum in Los Angeles, and the Los Angeles County Museum of Art. She is a professor at Cal Arts in Valencia. Please welcome Leisha.
Hi. Let's see. How do I go forward? Oh, thanks. Oh, okay. All right. Okay. So, this is my painting. It is from 2011. It's Untitled. And it's made of acrylic, gouache, graphite, paper, cardboard, canvas, and it's about 58 by 45 inches. And I'm going to just talk very briefly about this painting, just to give you an idea of like a context for why I chose to speak about this particular painting by Jasper Johns. And so to do that, in order to do that, I'm going to just talk about my process and materials very quickly. So this is a good example of the most current development of a particular way I've been working. It's whereas painted paper, canvas, construction paper, and cardboard are cut and aligned with one another and then taped together with transparent tape from behind. Sometimes the material is glued on the surface, but for the most part, each form, line, or section sits within a gap, which has been removed to accommodate it. And I'm just going to say, if I may, that the reason I'm technically describing how I physically make the work is because you really can't see all of this, I think, with the digital reproduction. So if you can just imagine it. So here, the cardboard-backed canvas is incorporated into this combination. And I can show you a detail that gives you a little bit better idea. So this part is canvas, and this is paper from my studio floor, and this is acrylic, and that's construction paper. So let's see. So this enables me to treat. So everything has been glued to cardboard. So this enables me to treat and cut canvas like a rigid material while maintaining the absorbent texture of the canvas's weaves. And then the entire piece is then attached to a wood and aluminum panel. And so during this process, parts that have been cut out and replaced with another form are saved for potential use in another painting. And that's really important because this is a process of habitual collecting. And I see that as another kind of arranging and editing that happens around or outside of the work, but completely informs it. So I've got the cardboard stencils I use to make these diamonds, these blue diamonds, and I'll be using them in a painting sooner or later. And I find that what excites me about that is that the tool and remnant becomes the instigation and beginning of a new work. Mark making with a stencil is interesting to me because it's painting and defining via removal. And so examining the mark, we notice it as the record of a specific process or activity which involves imagining a tool or device plus paintbrush plus paint, as opposed to just paintbrush and paint. The paper is from my studio floor, like I was saying, and like the canvas and construction paper, it's backed with cardboard. And this particular paper's surface holds about 5 years of stains, drips, spray-painted marks, brush marks, footprints, and dirt. And it, like many of the materials I use, holds an inherent history of older work. So I've always been incorporating my I've recently been incorporating my paint rags and textiles into the paintings. And I'm trying to maintain a continual stream of potentiality among every element in my practice. And so I'm very interested in how the painting collage becomes a temporal index of gestures and decisions when I include the tools from my studio in the pieces themselves. And this is something, long-winded way of getting to what comes up when I look at Jasper Johns' work. It's an ever-shifting, let's see, let's get to the painting. Ever-shifting and inclusive practice, reflecting how personal experience, gestures, and ultimately desires informs one's identity. So this is near the lagoon, and it's from 2002-2003, so it's like 10 years ago. It's pretty rad. Encaustic on canvas and wood with objects. It's the last in his catenary series of paintings, and for those of you in need of a refresher, a catenary is the curve assumed approximately by a heavy uniform cord or chain hanging freely from 2 points, not in the same vertical line. And so, in this case, the catenary lines have been created by this string, not this string in particular, but this tool which hangs from 2 eyelets at the top of each corner of the painting, and then those sort of wood pieces are on hinges. There's one piece of wood on the left side, and then there's 2 attached with hinges on the right side. And so you can sort of move the curve or pull the string to tighten it to make a different kind of degree curve. So another little interesting thing about this painting is that the format is based on Edgar Degas' reconstruction of Manet's execution of Maximilian, but then from 1868, and then turned vertically. And so that, I think, is really wild because, so the left-hand section of the canvas showing General Mejia was probably cut off by Manet himself, and then they believe that the canvas was cut up into smaller fragments after he died. And then the pieces were sold separately, and Degas came and eventually purchased all the surviving fragments and reassembled them onto a single canvas. And so it's funny, it's like a post-mortem collaboration and an incredible historical trajectory that says something about Manet, but perhaps more about Degas. And so to push the story further, Johns uses the Degas reconstruction as a guide for the initial composition. And then he sets the canvas panels like as stand-ins for the collected fragments. And the borders of these ghost fragments become a negative drawing within the surface of the painting. Which brings me to the subject of Johns's relationship to drawing, which is incredibly committed, just from my own experience, limited experience of. So he's obviously, for him, it is a very important way of making. I think drawing activates surface, and often the surfaces of his paintings become a space where the varied residue or effects of process and production relate to one another, as opposed to, or in addition to, a place where painted color and form would interact with each other. So in this case, Johns has constructed a built-in device or tool to draw or embed curves into the encaustic wax. And like a stencil, the string is pulled away from the surface after it's been painted. The resulting line is a line of absence, a line that's been produced via removal of both paint and tool. And I like to think of this as an elaboration on what we traditionally expect of drawing, which would be line imposed onto surface or erased from surface. So this absence line isn't simply like an erased line. It introduces the physical result of process and therefore time and duration. Another way of inducing a time consciousness is through deciphering layers of paint. Here, Johns has initially covered the entire painting with red and yellow canvas and blue sections. And then he's covered these primary colors with shifting shades of gray and caustic. And it's important that it's encaustic because we're looking at a dense, dull, textured surface, one that can slow down this deciphering of paint layers because it's calling attention to the surface. Another pace changer would be the gray. And by covering the entire surface in fluctuating tones of seemingly neutral color, nuances and tonal shifts become accentuated and subtlety is predicated. However, to me, there's nothing subtle about a gray monochrome with a string hanging in front of it. And if there is ever a color that represents ambiguity and all of its glorious potential, I would say it's probably gray. And that excites me completely. The string or unused catenary device, and I like to sort of think of it as like a stand-in for the tool that was used to make the curves in the paintings because they would obviously be full of paint or encaustic. But as you can see, there's like a little dab down here. Just kind of like a hint of that this is, what could potentially have been used. So it creates a shadow, which is like a nice doubling effect. So this simultaneous encompassing effect is something I'm fascinated by in John's work. It's a quality where contrary or binary relationships are elaborated on and complicated by an embracement of difference. And so a catenary tool can be many things at once, or the color gray can be many things at once, and ultimately the entire piece engages on so many levels at once. So this isn't just a painting, it's a messy, non-definable, hybrid, or mutant thing that is totally still and yet goes in so many directions at once, and I find this so powerful. Like many of John's works, material accumulation is combined with an endless flux of process. Cutting, nailing, painting, sticking things together are all shared means of making. The specificity or integrity of any one medium is exchanged for the mutual space of production, the production of production itself. And to me, this is what the production of desire looks like. And I see this as the artist finding the potential in one's own work, as if the work's inherent nature is one which is always generating and perpetuating. And in order to get to this point, and I do think it has a lot to do with one's own perspective to what and relationship to what one makes, one needs to enlist the act of paying much attention to how and what one makes. And this seems that it's not always about looking outward for what to make for Johns. And that in itself is something that I'm completely inspired by and sort of strive and am committed to somehow trying to achieve in my own way, in my own work. So thank you.
Thank you so much. That was really wonderful. Our next presenter is Mary Weatherford. Born in Ojai, California, LA-based painter Mary Weatherford received her BA from Princeton University in 1984 and her MFA from Bard College in 2006. Mary has been included in numerous notable exhibitions, including the 2008 California Biennial and more recently as part of the contemporary collection at the Hammer Museum in Los Angeles. Her most recent project, titled The Bakersfield Paintings, has received notable praise. Her work is in the collections of the Museum of Modern Art, and the Brooklyn Museum in New York, the LA County Museum. She is represented by Brennan and Griffin in New York, and was exhibited in the Todd Madigan Gallery at Cal State Bakersfield University, or Cal State College. Thank you. Welcome, Mary.
Hi, good morning. I'm so happy to be here, and thank you, Lation. Thank you, Tom, for those wonderful talks. And I want to tell you how I came to make the Bakersfield paintings. And there's a little button here that I'm supposed to press. Okay, so here we have the Bakersfield sign. It was built by a hotel. They wanted to expand and build a walkway from one side of Union Avenue to the other. And it used to be Highway 99 and run straight through Bakersfield. And I was asked to come to Cal State Bakersfield to make a show in the gallery there with the students. In 1963, after they built a new Highway 99 and nobody went up Union Avenue, the businesses along Union Avenue got together and put a sign at the top of Bakersfield and the bottom of Bakersfield. Sun, fun, stay, play. Here's Bakersfield in the middle of Kern County. So I went to Bakersfield and I checked into the Padre Hotel. Then I went over to the Todd Madigan Gallery to take a look at the space. I started talking to students. I started asking them about the Bakersfield sound because that was the thing that was most interesting to me, and oil. I asked this kid, "Where are you from?" He said, "Bakersfield." I said, "Where's your parents from?" He said, "Bakersfield." I go, "What do your parents do?" He goes, "My dad works in an almond hauling factory, has his whole life. Actually, he's a manager." The almond hauling factory is owned by Paramount. The Paramount is owned by the Resnicks. Now the Resnicks are advertising pistachios during the Super Bowl game. We used to get all our pistachios from Iran. Then after the Iran hostage crisis, we started growing our own pistachios. Now the Resnicks are the biggest exporter of pistachios in the world. Then I went to a Basque restaurant called Wool Growers. There are a lot of Basque people in Bakersfield. They immigrated there and started growing sheep, raising sheep. I had a really big dinner. Then the next day I went to the Natural History Museum. And I learned all about the Miocene Age. Actually, Bakersfield used to be on the coast, and there were lots of big animals swimming in the sea, pterodactyls flying around in the air. And when they died, those beautiful big rivers that flow down from the Sierras covered them gently with silt. And then the San Andreas Fault did its thing. And Bakersfield ended up in the middle of the state. And all those great animals formed two of the largest oil fields in the contiguous United States. The Sunset Midway oil field and the Kern River oil field. This is in their outdoor museum. This is a gusher in Taft. It gushed for a year and a half. And at that time, people didn't think it was a natural disaster. They thought it was money. I drove around. I looked at some stuff. But what I was really looking for was this. I'd heard all about it. I didn't really know what it was. But in order to understand what it was, we kind of have to go back to Dorothea Lange's work. You can go on the Library of Congress website and download anything you want by Dorothea Lange because you're an American taxpayer and you paid for it. Well, there was the Dust Bowl, and the Dust Bowl happened because There was an unusually wet period, and we planted up all the Great Plains. And then we had an unusually dry period. And the wind came along, and the dust blew all the way into the Atlantic Ocean. Big, big, big clouds of dust. It was a gigantic disaster, which resulted in the, thank you. 1 minute? 5, thank you. So anyway, the dust blew, big, big, big problem, big migration from Oklahoma, Texas, New Mexico, across, up and over the Tehachapi Pass, and they looked down on the San Joaquin Valley and saw heaven. It was all green. And they came in jalopies, and there were way too many people for how much work there was. Big disaster. We've all read Steinbeck. This family came from Houston. They've been there for 2 years. This is a little girl listening to the cotton pickers strike. And, well, it's incredible. They're trying to change it from like 75 cents for 100 pounds to like 95 cents. Didn't work. Next time, take the train. So anyway, what these people brought with them was their music. And they became migrant workers, and all up and down the San Joaquin Valley were established honky-tonks. This is the most famous honky-tonk. If you take anything home tonight, just remember this, the Blackboard Cafe. This is from an unpublished Life magazine article that followed the Hells Angels from a trip from San Bernardino to Bakersfield. Most famous guy to come out of Bakersfield was Buck Owens. Here's Buck Owens at Carnegie Hall with Buck Owens and the Buckaroos. And as the current Nashville Museum exhibition puts it, they're wearing eye-popping outfits. The other bard of the Bakersfield Sound is Merle Haggard. And then the other bard of the Bakersfield Sound is the guy who came up in the punk clubs in the 80s in Los Angeles. Here we have a sample.
I came here looking for something I couldn't find anywhere else.
This is the last surviving honky-tonk in all of California. It's called Trout's. It's in Oildale on North Chester Avenue. I know Trout's pretty well now. I drove to Panorama Drive and I looked out over the oil fields. There's Kern River in the foreground. Still pumping oil, still making millions of dollars. None of it ends up in Bakersfield. I got pulled over by the sheriff right after this picture because of Homeland Security issues. Then I found this place, Center Neon. This is my class of students, and I decided to make some paintings with neon in it after taking stock of everything in Bakersfield. This is David, my neon guy. These are some donuts I bought my students. These are plans for the neon paintings. That's a piece of tape. That's the sky outside of Todd Madigan Gallery. I fell in love with the sky in the San Joaquin Valley. That's another picture of the sky. That's Dan, the lab tech. David brought in a project he made in high school. Those are the start of my paintings. I'm trying to do Bakersfield at different times of day. I rented myself a furnished condo in Bakersfield so I could really check it out. This is a lot bigger than my studio in Los Angeles. That's my delivery of neon. I really lucked out. They made it not too crooked, not too straight. Perfect. I'd have problems later on. This is the little things we build in the inside to attach the neon to. Later on, we figured out those bars could slide and we didn't have to build those big wood things. I thought that was kind of cool. It looked like a fishing pole. go.
Drum roll.
You can turn it up.
Oh my God, it's so beautiful.
Yay!
Huh? Flick my eyes past it. No, what's it do?
You can turn it up.
Just take your gaze and put it like that.
Can we turn it up?
You got the blue line across, you'll see.
Oh, the blue line.
Well, you'll see the, yeah, it's the negative of the red. You'll see the discharge is actually broken down into.
Then we had the opening. Tons of people came from the community. All the paintings are named for the streets of Bakersfield, and they recognize them. That's my neon guy. Then I had my party at Trout's, and my sister-in-law's band came up and played. This was the next day. I thought I'd take a band photo. This is the installation. Panorama Drive, Midnight Union Avenue in North Chester. North Chester, Ruby 1, and Ruby 2. Oh, these are squished. Ruby 1, Ruby 2, and Truxton. In the morning, the kind of a mist is coming off of the Kern River, and it's really kind of pretty and blue. California. Truxton. That glass came off of the old Thrifty Mart. Almost done. Midnight Union Avenue. Oh, that's where the Bakersfield sign was, but now it isn't. Now there's a red light district. Panorama Drive, overlooking the oil fields. End of the show. This is now the office in that center neon place. Then I visited some almond trees, looked at some bees, went down to visit the Steinbeck camp. And then that's the end.
Thank you, Mary. That was lovely. Our next presenter Malika Magozi, works with an interdisciplinary framework to create large-scale project-based installations. Using historic figurative painting, cinematic tropes, psychoanalysis, and post-colonial theory, his practice interrogates the specificity of regionalism in order to address questions of nationhood, colonialism, and anti-colonial sentiments, and the perception of historicized events. Born in Botswana, Maliko attended Williams College in Massachusetts, later the Slade College in London, and in 2007 attended the Whitney Independent Study Program. He has since received his MFA from UCLA in 2011, and he currently teaches at NYU. Please welcome Malika Magozi.
Hi, thank you, James. Which button do I press? This one? Okay. On a recent trip to Dakar, I discovered, inevitably, like any tourist in Dakar, what the Senegalese call souvenirs, or reverse glass paintings, pictured here. Admittedly, my work has no connection with Senegal, but having encountered and being amazed at the technique of these paintings, I began to think more about my process differently. Souvenirs, as you know, are painted in reverse and on the verso of the glass. This sounds a bit odd because glass doesn't have a verso or recto, but the painting necessitates this division. What really interests me about the process is that the composition has to be so carefully crafted because the painter has to paint from foreground to midground to background, the reverse of traditional painting. So this method, I think, is similar to mine. Not that I only paint from foreground to background, but more importantly, my studio program involves carefully crafting the paintings in such a diagrammatic and somewhat boring way. Another reason for insisting on talking about process is a recurring question of, so tell us what this means. So tell us what this means when some people encounter my installations. Because of this, I began to consider that part of the meaning or narrative of the work must be invisible and rests within my process. So in many ways, I'm arguing with some post-colonial theorists against the post-structuralist preoccupation with voiding the author. Or put differently, that there exists meaning beyond the semiotic linguistic tropes within the object, which informs the meaning, whatever that is. And that's another example of Souvert. Let me just back off a bit. Pax Cafraria, which I'll be talking about, like many of my projects, began with the title, because the title serves as the conceptual framework that grounds the project. So before I make any drawings or any paintings, it is necessary that I come up with the title and intertitles. So no title, no artwork. This is followed by rigorous and in-depth research that involves data collection, including sand samples, as you can see, and other media. So I go around and I dig up holes, and wherever you dig up a hole, you have to realize that the topsoil is very different from the color that you get at the bottom. And these are my notes for when I come to make the paintings. This is another example. Again, I collected a lot of research in terms of just interviewing and other media. And I'll just kind of play a short clip. Do I press something to play? No. Is it playing? How do I make it play? Does anyone know? There's no video? No. Oh, really? I'm sorry. I mean, it's a fantastic piece of music. Maybe I'll anyway, that's that. So anyway, the what he's saying is kind of important. I'll just talk about it, even though you can't hear it. So following the conception of the title and research, I storyboard all paintings that will be produced. In this phase, I make one drawing or one diagram per painting. And in this drawing, I chart out the composition, line work, color schemes, brush strokes, and layout of every frame, as well as how each frame relates to the one next to it, and more importantly, how each frame relates to all the other frames in the installation. This is kind of an example of, and again, this is at the early stage of the composition. So I make different kinds of notes, from direction of brush mark to the size of the brush mark. If I need to invent a kind of brush, I'll invent it. Like a 12-inch brush, I had to glue a couple of brushes together. So although my work falls within the convention of painting, I borrow from cinematic techniques and tropes to construct each frame and the installation as a whole. For example, in Pax Cafraria, the installation is constructed to mimic the film strip, strategically use cinematic scale, privilege peripheral vision as opposed to frontal vision, use cinematic shots like the pan and the medium long shots, and last but not least, the use of intertitles to frame the 8 chapters. This program is complemented by a set of rules, like no close-ups or no landscapes, absolutely no landscapes. For this reason, I think of my artistic program as existing at the intersection of 3 disciplines, namely cinema, history painting, and post-colonial analytic theory. About the project and the title, because the title is very important to me. Pax Cafraria developed from the simple question of how people celebrate to the consideration of what people celebrate, or the communal organization of enjoyment. The word Pax, taken from the original phrase, we Romans have purchased the Pax Romana with our blood, highlights the essence of institutionalized enforced peace at the height of the Roman Empire. Pax Romana, contrary to conventional belief, is about nationalism, not about peace. It is precisely about the bond between blood and soil. Therefore, Pax captures the very texture of celebration, the texture of how and what societies celebrate, how a community organizes its enjoyment, which in turn structures feeling of nationalism. Kaffraria comes from British Kaffraria, which was a black settlement that the British established when they first arrived in southern Africa. As many people know, the British used Kaffraria as code for kafr, the equivalent of nigger. Now back to the song, which you did not see. And the song is titled Machingilane, and it's sung in my native tongue, Setswana. Machingilane is a derogatory Setswana term used to refer to security guards in Botswana. The term, as I understand it, developed from a disdain and fear of what this figure represents and the position he or she occupies. You can think of Fela Kuti's Zombie in the same way. As you can tell from the images, this one, and I'll give you this one, I have an infatuation with this figure, the proxy to those in power. What I want to emphasize is the use of language in the song, which you do not hear, which is bothering me. Everything is about specificity, you can tell. Anyway, my infatuation with this figure, the proxy to those in power. What I want to emphasize is the use of language in the song, because it is precisely the ways in which rhythm, concepts, and the construction of the song informed how I created some of these images. In the song, the singer attaches the suffix nyana to all the holdings associated with the security guard. Example here are kahaflofa nyana, kaberete nyana, kadirifi nyana, translated with his little half loaf, his little beret, his little boots. I should mention here that the idea of a half loaf is not foreign to us. We generally have the option of buying either a full loaf or a half loaf at grocery stores. Yet the half loaf has, over the years, become attached to low-wage laborers like construction workers and security guards. Undeniably, this suffix, nyana, is used to denigrate and belittle everything associated with the security guard. The same can be said for Zombie, who only shits when told to shit, shoot when told to shoot, think when told to think, and eat when told to eat. The song gradually speeds up in Fela Kuti's song, and he can no longer sustain the instructions. It all becomes nonsensical, and at this point, at a certain juncture, this figure becomes a vacuous, unthinking, unfeeling automaton. In essence, a useless piece of shit, a stupid thing. As I already pointed out, this song solicited a strong response from me. 1 minute. And forced me to consider the concept and significance of the security guard in colonial and post-colonial contemporary settings. One of the visual ways of dealing with this was to turn the security guard into a half silhouette, as you can see. In doing so, I wanted to make the figure less iconic and more diagrammatic. That is, to make the figure both abstract and particular, as well as to mirror the modularity and arbitrariness of this trope, his job and his uniform, onto the qualities of the nation state. I wanted to end with a few notes on narrative. Narrative in my work is always conceived of as non-linear, beginning in two places and having to meet in one location that nullifies the resolution or ending of the so-called plot. Structurally, my thinking of narrative has been heavily influenced by the Setswana figure of speech called tamalakane, which I can talk about later. My goal is not to give the viewer an already understood narrative, but rather to give a continuous local narrative, a narrative without a plot, or at best a minimal plot. And this minimal plot is obfuscated by the use of detail, namely of cultural specificity, which both informs the narrative but also conceals it by way of excluding those who are not privy to the context and significance of this information. I say local narrative because the point is always to attempt at countering or negating or canceling out the grand narrative, which is privileged enough never to compete. My understanding of local narrative is thus: a narrative that is not fixed, always under negotiation and construction, and always in contradiction to the grand narrative. So the local narrative, local here not used as a dirty word that refers to the quality of indigeneity, this form of narrative has more to do with narration than narrative.
So we have Mary Heilmann next. Mary Heilmann was born in San Francisco and received a BA from University of California, Santa Barbara, and an MA from the University of California, Berkeley. She lives and works in Bridgehampton, New York, and New York City. She's represented by 303 Gallery in New York and also Hauser and Wirth. Her current exhibition, Another Green World, is on display at Hausler Contemporary in Munich till May 4th, 2013. And then last month, her museum retrospective, Mary Heilmann, Good Vibrations, opened at the Neue Museum, State Museum for Art and Design in Nuremberg, Germany. And it'll be on view till June 23rd, 2013. Let's welcome Mary Heilmann.
Let's see, where's that red arrow? What do I? Duh, okay. Hi. Okay, so, yeah, the gist of this talk is the semantics and semiotics of music and visuals. And okay, you get it. Nice graphics. Okay, so Another Green World, and I think this piece is called Another Green World because I made another green world before, and it name checks Brian Eno's song from way back, which I'm thinking a lot about the structure and the geometry of sound and visuals. And when I sit in my studio and stare at the wall and stare at my work and trying to figure out what to do next, that's kind of the way my thinking's going. And I'm listening to music at the same time and sort of like orally and visually taking it apart and putting it back together again in this really scary, obsessive-compulsive way. This is the show in Munich, in the gallery. And I really, really wanted to show in this gallery because of the architecture of it. It's got this weird spiral staircase right in the middle of the gallery. And I'm mixing up high and low art, design and painting, and making a kind of an autobiographical connection between everything. And the chair showed up in my art about 10 years ago because I wanted people to sit down and stay there longer. And they're on wheels, so you can, if you see someone you like across the room, you can, so it has another function. Another Green World, another gist of this show is thinking about the culture of seeing things and hallucinations. Remembering my coming of age in the 60s here in San Francisco and Berkeley, and not so much being a stoner and an acid head. Actually, I wasn't, but it was all around me, and it didn't have much of an effect on me way back then, but I've been thinking about it a lot lately. So like the painting on the left, actually you can have a hallucination. If you stare at the grid on the right and then stare over at the pink on the left, you get to see an after image jumping around. You can't video it though, I tried. Duh. Give it a try. It's not that big, actually. I'm going to make a big one like that. It's awesome. it's stinky. And this is about 3 feet high. I kind of make the chairs to match the paintings too, and vice versa, like because it's such a bad, low-class thing to do. But actually, yeah, the collectors do that big time, like in their houses. And I don't want to diss anybody. And actually, it's all good. That was supposed to be sort of a sarcastic insult, but when you get it right, it's awesome. Like that. Oh, and this picture, like if you go stand right in front of the, I think it's called Twirly, or something, let me think. Anyway, if you stand right up in front of it, it's kind of hallucinogenic too. And it really bows to English optical lady painter from the 60s, who's got to show up now. I'm blocking on her name. Bridget Riley, yes. The one painting I made called Surfing on Acid at my opening down in Orange County, this aging surfer dude came up to me and said, "I did that." Imagine, God. He's probably still out there. And that, you know, that's what these are about. It's kind of, I'm loving seeing them giant like this. When I was coming up, my work to make a living was teaching little kids, preschool. And it was brilliant because, as you can tell, I got a lot of ideas from them. Green weave, this is called. I like how the chairs flatten out, too. That's going to show up in the work. Here's the famous stairway. And so the green cup piece is called Cup Piece Remembering Donald Judd. Like way back, I got really inspired by Judd and loved how pieces that I saw in the 60s in Pasadena looked like shelves. And then I went to Marfa, you know, not maybe 10 years ago, and was blown, and he was gone already. He wasn't on the planet. And loved the kind of domestic feeling of Marfa, of the whole settlement there, except with this massive scale. And Judd really, oh, there's a shot of it. And I like how they kind of match this way, the pieces. What was I going to say that? Judd really inspired my making chairs. And one thing I could say is, I wish oh, that's a cute picture of that. I have to make that piece. I say mine are comfortable where his weren't too comfortable. And I started out by doing ceramics, and this relates to the painting like as a sculpture. I'm mixing it up now. It's kind of scary. Let's see, what else can I say? Well, this kind of combines I'm kind of complimenting myself, de Kooning-esque gesture, and then I take that out and put these, paint these other colors over it and squeegee it out. You know, this is good vibrations. This is another memorial. This remembers a friend of mine, David Rattray, poet from New York poet guy, brilliant. And again, it's about like if you're staring at the spot painting and the spots kind of start flying off the painting. This thing was shown first in London, and I was hoping that Damien Hirst would show up, but he was too busy. Okay, now let's see what clever thing. Oh, I know. I'll finish by saying this. Let me go back. That's okay. I'll finish by saying I'm all like into, oh, I don't want to do this. Painting is so dead. I don't want to go there. I can't talk about painting. I don't want to be a painter. I want to be a digital writer, artist. But this thing has been so great so far. I guess it's not dead after all. Born again.
Wow, thank you so much. Now I would like to invite you to watch us kind of move a table and whisper about how great everything is going so far, while we bring up our two moderators for the panel discussion. Our moderators for the first panel discussion are faculty in the painting and drawing department as well as graduate faculty. They are John Zurier, who coincidentally, yes, welcome John, who has a show up at Paula Anglum that just opened, fortunately, and Kim Anno. So if our panelists can join me and the moderators as well.
So we're just going to show a quick excerpt of this just to recoup that technical mishap.
Great. It's so nice to have that opportunity. It's always a little scary with your clips, like, are they on the drive or not? Yeah. So we're going to start off with a few questions, and what I wanted to start with was two things. One is, Tom, you didn't really get a chance to describe the system that you're working with in your current paintings, and so I thought maybe you could take just a couple minutes and do that. And then the other question I have is for everyone, which is, all of you described a kind of process and a project and a strategy. You could call it a system. You could call it a good time. There's all a specific sort of way that you have about building your paintings. And my question is, how often do those strategies change for you? Is there an elastic kind of strategy that you're involved in? Or is it short term and then you flip, make another one? Just really curious about your strategies for making paintings, and how much they've changed over time, or are they staying the same, etc. So Tom, could you first just describe your process a little bit? It's pretty interesting for everyone to know.
It's a little hard because it's sort of which process. Sort of which process, because it's changing all the time. By necessity, for me anyway, I think for everybody, it's like hardest thing to do is get out of your own way, and so you're constantly trying to come up with these sort of roadblocks. Some of them are really stupid, but you sort of put them up there so your taste doesn't come in and paint the painting, and it's hard to do. It's hard to get out of your own way, and so like that roadblock has to change sort of constantly to make what appears to you. Okay, real fast. As far as I can tell, with 100% commitment, you jump into an idea or whatever, knowing full well it's kind of the wrong place to start, but you have to sort of sidestep that and be very committed to whatever that is. And hopefully, if you're lucky, somewhere along the line, sort of the reality of the thing breaches through that sort of system that you set up, and it appears often as a mistake. And like the initial thing to react to is like, how do I fix that mistake and make it cool again because people won't like me anymore and stuff like that if I leave it ugly or different or something. But if you can stop yourself from correcting that for just a few seconds and realize that like the mistake is actually your new beauty, the one you haven't seen before, then you sort of let that happen, and it works like maybe once or twice, and then you have to sort of reinvent it again. So I think the reinvention like puts you in a vulnerable state, and that's a state of invention, and so I think that's what sort of lasts in a work. So that's the long answer.
Okay, anybody else? Let's hear some more about the kind of strategies and ways of building your paintings, and how are these long-term strategies? Do you see them as like something to work on over a lifetime, or are they changing like you were talking about, the change so rapidly, but maybe everybody feels differently about it? Just love to hear what you guys have to say about it.
I think mine changed, but I made those paintings for Bakersfield so that people who lived there could go to see the show and say, hey, that looks like Truxton Avenue. Or, oh yeah, I didn't want to put my stuff on Bakersfield. And the only thing that was left out of my bio was that I went to the Whitney program. And I think that's where, it's like my paintings are that, it's like, Princeton crashed into the Whitney program. Like, it's like New York school plus a lot of research. Like, and that's shown up in my work for years.
Cool. Does anyone else have anything to say about strategies?
I mean, I think in terms of, I guess, system, my projects take some time to make. So like the project I'm working on, it's 8 chapters, and it takes about a full year to make just 2 parts. So ostensibly, it shouldn't take me 5 to 6 years just to do one. And even just the storyboarding takes about 8 months. So I'm drawing for 8 months and not painting. And it's a bit, again, it's a bit boring, but I kind of enjoy that boredom because it slows down the practice in a particular way. And I have rules, and I think the rules don't change, but I think after finishing the project, hopefully it will change. But I think for me it's important to have rules as a painter or as an artist, just to kind of say this is what I'm not willing to do. That's very important to me. Not because as artists you can really make anything you can just make all the shit you want to make. So for me it's important to say I'm really not willing to do this. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. And that's really why I have the rules. It's not like I'm a control freak. But I do have outlets. I mean, I paint chickens and dogs, and no one ever sees those. So.
You should have told us that.
You should do a drug test. Just kidding. What I love about what's coming out of this is that the alleged death and revival of painting is really something significant. It's not that it evolved in such a cool way. And let's see. Well, when Mary said Princeton crashed with the Whitney program. Modernism crashed with postmodernism and relational aesthetics, like making the paintings so the abstract paintings so the people in Fresno could dig them is really relational aesthetics, and we're lucky to have that going on, all of us.
Does anybody want to talk more about that? About the audience, your audience, relational aesthetics in terms of your paintings? I mean, I think that that's something that is still sort of counterposed a lot of times, that this idea of relationalism and social practice being on one end and painting being on the end of the marketplace. And what you're saying is no, that's not the case.
I guess they are duking it out. I don't hear from the enemy anymore, actually, because we're getting pretty strong.
Who is that, Mary?
Well, that would be the conservative modernists who say the whole story is inside of the frame. So I think that's over.
Does anyone want to respond? Lucia, did you want to say anything about that? Or?
About the larger context?
Any of the above.
Well, I just wanted to say one thing about the process, the system question you had. Just that I really relate to what you were saying about the kind of mistake being more like a pose for an opportunity, and I think in order to kind of be able to engage the mishap or whatever, the thing that goes wrong or something, I do believe that it's so much about keeping on your toes, and so therefore you do have to have like your kind of program or plan, but then being able to change it, I think, is really a hard thing to do. And no matter how often you can do it, I think every time it's still like relearning. And also thinking about this idea of like, the remnant sort of beginning a new painting. And I was reading about how David Bowie would work on his albums, and when he was writing Low, that Low actually was written because when he did Station to Station, he made created this one song that was the inspiration for the next. And so there's this continual stream between bodies of work, and I feel like that's very much the thing that keeps the work moving forward, hopefully.
What do you think about that new album, David Bowie?
I actually haven't heard it because I feel like it's I don't want to like tarnish, or I don't know. I mean, I think I'm a really big fan of that period, so but I'll be open to it. Yeah, I haven't.
50% of that album, really great.
Really?
50%.
Can I just? I just wanted to add also with the question, with the notion of the audience or the relational part is, I think one of the most difficult thing for me to deal with is, being an immigrant still, and having really not shown my work in my country. And all my family's in Botswana, and I go back maybe once, twice a year. So I am from there, and I still go back there, but I haven't really shown, I haven't shown my work there. And it would be fantastic for me to share the work with them, to kind of see what that other audience, what they would take out of it. So I think in some way, because I'm bouncing between, Botswana and America, is I kind of have an imaginary, audience, or to kind of say, someone who's very invested in the history of Southern Africa and post-colonialism, and some kind of theory and history painting. It seems like it could never be one.
So are you saying you have not shown your work in Africa, the whole continent, or just Botswana?
I've not. I've kind of had a drawing shown, I think, in Cameroon in a library, which was was not a show. And I, when I was young, I had like a small little show in in a theater in my high school, and that was really it.
Well, we have to change that. I mean, that's super important. So much going on in Africa today in contemporary art.
I've just wanted to, I was told by Anne Carson, the poet, always to start with a joke. So she told us a joke, and the joke goes like this. Where do otters come from? It's otter space. Which I thought is actually really appropriate for this. What's incredible is that it's titled Painting Expanded, and it's really is based on what Mary, that you just said. It's really about painting, the expansiveness of painting, and how broad it can be and the boundaries it can be. I have a very specific question for Maleko and then a question for everybody. The question for everybody is, it's incredible the detail that everyone's concerned about. So I think, especially for our audience, to talk about what, how important these details are. Tom, you mentioned this a lot, other people mentioned it. When you talked about that, Leisha, about just that one speck of gray on the catenary rope, it's just enough to give you this clue. All of these things are so important, the green tone in yours, Mary. So I'd like to know about all of these specific details, and also the secrets. So much of this work is autobiographical, and you have all of these secrets in your work that may or may not be visible to the viewer, but they yet still make up the work. These are part of the details. So that's kind of a hard question. But anyway, so it's about detail. The other question is, for you, Maleko, you wanted to, after we couldn't play the video, you said there's a term in Botswana for narrative, and you were going to tell us more about it. So can you just do that now?
Yeah, I mean, it's a figure of speech called tamalakani, which I translated as kind of like a metaphor, but it's not really, because metaphors are more symbolic and poetic. This one is not that poetic. So, so an example I'll give is which basically means, so you give the whole phrase, and the whole phrase points to something, and that phrase was actually made to code what is normatively known. So basically means pula, which means rain. And where it comes from is, I'll just explain. So tir is not actually, the translation of tir means, the translation would be tir, the royal bird. And tir is actually an imitative. It's an imitation of raindrops hitting the hard surface, right? So it's not actually an actual bird, but it's an imitative that refers to a bird. And why it's a royal bird? It's because, Botswana is 70% desert, and we really cherish rain. So, that is very important to us. So, that single phrase stands in for pula, which is rain. And pula is also our national currency. It's, just like the dollar. So it's kind of a coded kind of compounding of associations. And that's kind of how I think of how I make images. It's not like 1 + 1 = 2. It's like, 1 + X, Z, and everything. And how those associations, those compounded associations come together.
So then, generally, if anybody would like to speak about this notion of the detail and its relationship to the whole.
Especially because there's students here, that's one of my favorite topics, because you never know what's going to deliver the meaning, right? So,
yeah, they were talking, the question is, all of their work involves so much about detail. And when you were all talking about it, it was so much specifically about the detail in the work. And also there were so many things in the work that are autobiographical and almost like secrets that get put into the work, which the viewer might not see necessarily. So I wanted to know what the relationship is for you about the detail and the detail in relationship to the whole. So in the work.
well, that's interesting, because I don't think there are any secrets in those Bakersfield paintings at all. Right. Zero, zip, nothing. Right. They have no autobiographical nothing, right? No. So, but the facture, the way that they're made, is the way the meaning is delivered, right? So if the gesso was a little bit thicker, feel different. Everything would feel different. And one of the most interesting things, when I said I was lucky about the neon, not too straight, not too crooked, I did not want the neon to make a sign. Every time I've ever seen neon before, it's a curve or a line or a word. It's a sign. And so I'm kind of using a little fakery here. I said to my guy, I want it to look like a stick, like you just found it, like it existed already. And I didn't want it to look like I drew it, so that's the fake part, because I did. But it was supposed to be this signless piece of light that was going to stand in for when you're driving around and the sign goes by, like, oh, you know? So there's no autobiography in those.
Okay, that's a very clear statement. Yeah. But it's exactly what I'm talking about, in that when you say, I don't want it to be, I want it to be just so. And that's what's amazing, because I think all of you are saying, this has to be just so. So I was just wondering if you wanted to could talk more about that. Like, Mary, what about you and your color? Does this, does it need to be just so?
Oh, the other Mary.
The other Mary, this Mary. Yeah.
That's like out of the Bible, huh?
Yeah. The two Marys.
We're talking, let's see, detail?
Yeah.
Okay. And on biography, well, I guess with me, the biography isn't in, well, it's in the backstory, and actually the backstory, it does get out by writing and talking about it, and so, and in the titles, I guess, is a big part of it, in the titles. And so, and then the fact that we're talking relational aesthetics, where everything's going on all around the work, becoming part of the work, this kind of conversation, and even if I want to pick a fight with Mary over whether she's biographical or not, that, and she could probably sue me, could become part of the work. So, yeah, I can't get out of the outside and back into the work, and thinking about my own work.
I think part of it when I was sort of at the beginning of my presentation was trying to fight against, you know, the death of the author, you know, that famous sort of text which basically said, you know, any work is open to an infinite amount of interpretation. And I began thinking about, because a lot of people kept looking at my work and they started talking about post-colonial stuff. And, you know, part of my thinking right now is trying to figure out, is there some kind of post-colonial aesthetic or aesthetic informed by the post-colony? Figuring out what post-colony means, you know, it has very, very specific meaning, and then the aesthetic, which also counters, you know, it stands in contradiction to what the actual word post-colony means. So, so I think I'm just trying to say, well, no, it's not like the meaning of the work can only rest on the surface of the painting. You know, we can't just say it's just semiotic or visual semiotics, and you know, you read the painting and that's it. You know, I'm just arguing with what people have argued after the death of the author, that no, you know, we're not all privileged to kill the author. So, you know, at this point, the author absolutely matters. You know, if you want to try and understand these different histories which have not been privileged, you know, the author needs to still be there, because that's not part of the grand narrative.
So I have another question about the threshold and being inside the painting medium. And at the same time, Mary, you mentioned working through high and low ideas. And Mary, you're putting neon into the paintings. Those are the first neon embedded paintings I've seen, which is kind of thrilling. And Lucia, you're speaking about recycling everything you do to make the new thing. And Tom, you didn't describe it, but we studied your work deeply, and we understand about you making some images that are reflections from your studio and parts of master paintings, and like kind of a four-pronged system. I'm just curious about defying expectations around modernism and what modernism dictated, and then also not necessarily saying you're buying everything that's postmodern ideals. But so you seem to be kind of, all of you sort of mixing it back and forth. And so I'm just curious about this rules, breaking rules, and how you feel about that and how that informs new painting. Maybe Tom and Lucio could say something.
I'll say something. I guess, let's see. I think it's sort of an interesting component of all that is that the enemy is also, you are the enemy. I mean, you are in that way too, which it's a thing that we show up against, and so I mean, you have to have Judas to have Jesus, or you have to have the two sides of the thing, and so it's kind of fun to sort of play both sides in that. It becomes pretty political that way too, and that kind of, I think that arises sort of in the detail question. I think, like Mary said, that an audience knows the specifics of the story or something behind a work, but sort of only as the artist is talking about it, or if you're reading about what they're addressing. But I had a situation where many of my sculptures were bought like in the same few moments by someone who politically I couldn't stand them. It would be hard to be in the same room with the person because of how sort of structured they were in opposition to my thoughts. But before they knew the story, before they knew me at all, I was not in the same state. They sort of connected with something that was human between us. And that was sort of kind of a beautiful moment where you didn't need to know the soap opera or the details or the story at all to be able to connect in sort of more meaningful way. And it was that kind of connection is like you can't make that happen, so that's my 2 cents.
Anybody else have that experience selling their work to people they hate? Anyone?
I'll try to think about that. I was gonna just say couple of my secrets, and then tie that into what you were talking about. Trying to at least. I think. Well, first of all, I am a queer formalist, and that seems to be. I often have to really restrain myself from cutting and cutting and cutting and cutting my paintings up. I mean that, and because of that, because I do cut and rearrange and replace and tape them from behind, often the backs of the paintings look better than the fronts, and that's I try to learn from that, but that's literally a secret, like hidden in the paintings. I think those are my kind of. I mean the sort of like traditional notions of formalism. I think I kind of embrace that if you were going to define that, but then trying to sort of own it in my own way, and thinking about how the way I live in the world, and that's why I was saying that I'm queer. I'm also half Mexican, but the way that I move through the world, I think, informs the way that I make decisions in the studio. I think they're totally related to each other, but it is hard to say like this stands in for this and this means this, But it's all very, and the political, when you're talking about the politics of the image, I think about this constantly, but I think more in terms of formally, those kinds of hierarchies of color and recession and like things receding and what's, those are the kinds of things that I'm constantly obsessed with in the studio. So, and I do believe, again, like that it's completely comes out of difference and repetition in the world and just experience,
Do you think queering formalism or a queer formalist has a way, can you describe that as a difference from a formalist? Is there, like, queering the formalism?
I think it's just that it's more undefinable, really. And again, I think it's probably very related to the whole subject of this entire symposium, that it's an expansive formalism. That's probably how I would get remotely close to that.
Well, I just want to, because we were standing outside the hotel this morning, and we were talking about, the question was, am I a feminist? Which I would say yes. The work's been like feminist from probably like, I'd mark it like 82. Like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm a feminist artist. No, I'm trying to think, because when I saw Sherry Levine give her lecture on those re-photographed Walker Evans, it just went in me like this arrow to the brain, like bang. Like, end of the road, no other choices. Just re-photograph the photograph. And once you get to the end of the road, then the road continues, right? But you have to go like, you know what? It's the end of the road. And I remember sitting in the auditorium and seeing that Walker Evans re-photograph and just like, and that's what Mary's talking about, postmodernism. Like, I mark that. That's like the greatest postmodern piece of art ever made, right? I think we all agree on that, right?
Do we all agree?
So, end of the road. Right, let's just all agree. Okay, hand raised, that's it. End of the road, and then you get to, I can't go on, I'll go on. Anyway, so the thing that came up this morning with what you're talking about is, I think political art doesn't look like political art. Political art is political. See, there's two totally different things, because in art schools you start talking about what does political art look like? What does art that looks like it can affect change look like? And I don't think it, wears its heart on its sleeve. Like what Leisha's doing is political because she is a political being because she exists. It's the existence that is political, right? So, anyway, Mary's right. I thought about it. Is it autobiographical? Okay, so I'm gonna like totally retool that. Go like, all right, okay, because we can analyze this. So like, so those paintings are made on the ground, and they're made by me, and I have to get down on my hands and knees with a sponge, and essentially just wash the floor. Right, but with some paint on it, which that's my one of my favorite pieces is that Janina Antoni, Loving Care, where she washes the floor with her hair. Amazing piece, and you've probably all seen a picture of it. Just like there's certain pieces that artists make that go, that one, that's important. And this goes in my okay, ding, ding, ding. These important pieces for me, like the Sherry Levine re-photo, Janina Antoni washing the hair with her floor with her hair. And so those are made with these big sponges. And back when we were having different jobs, some friends of mine had jobs cleaning houses. They go, the only way to wash a floor is on your hands and knees. Anyway, that's the little, so then it's like the Pollock thing of the canvas becomes an arena in which to act. The canvas becomes an arena in which to wash the floor, Okay, that's all I have there.
Well, that's great. You're just bringing, daily life, real things right into the work. And I think Mary's so interesting with Mary HEILMANN, when you talked about that you made these chairs, and you could sit down and look at it, and it's recreating a lot of your studio experience, which is looking at the paintings, having hallucinatory experiences with your own work, looking, can I make something? I think the master narrative, especially in modernism, is you're standing up. You're standing up, and you're facing the painting, and the painting is a plane. And this plane, you're confronting this plane as a standing figure. If you're sitting down, it's not the same thing. And all of a sudden, sitting down changes the narrative of how we view a painting. So I would love to hear about how you all talked about music, you talked about great presentations. We got a Dragnet presentation for Bakersfield. And I want to hear about how Dragnet and music and all of the things come into work. And I'd like you to ask each other, talk to each other, because you guys did amazing presentations. What came up for all of you? You have a question for each other?
Yeah,
about
before we open it up too,
I want to say something. Like I guess that's why I get so personally involved in the Bakersfield one, is because it made me cry. It was so reminded me so much of Bakersfield. Oh, and then how theatrical Mary's style is, what great timing she has. And then each person, this whole thing has been kind of theatrical, because each person has a different timing and a different, it's just been amazing. It's art.
Anyone else have any questions for each other?
I think we're all too terrified to think of questions. At least I was. I mean, one thing that stuck out. I think it was this. I don't think it was more of a personality thing, but also it's something that comes out throughout the work, not with mine, but with other panelists. Was this not comedy, but some kind of humor. There's a kind of humor that's part of not just the delivery and the timing, like Mary was saying, but it's also part of the work. And I was wondering if if any of you might talk a bit more about humor or maybe some kind of comedic effect, and how that, I guess, kind of informs your practice, how you think of painting and so forth, or even how you think of yourself as a person making these things, because it is absurd sometimes. You're sitting and you're making this damn thing, and sometimes it ends up in a closet, or someone buys it for a stupid amount of money. I mean, it's at some point so I was just wondering if we could talk maybe a bit about sort of comedic and humor.
Thanks. Presenting, I wasn't trying to be funny. But when making the work, it's I mean, for me anyway, it's humiliating. And so, so you're making the best you can, but it is like these sort of like from, I mean, how could it not be from some private occurrence or something that happened to you, to have enough energy to go ahead and make it? So oftentimes the private things, it's like you don't want to have that in public, but you're making it, and then you give it to, you present it, and it's like, geez, it's like, you show up with your pants down basically with it. So I was lucky that you guys were laughing, because it gets you to look away from me. I think that's the whole reason, and that goes back to what I was saying before about trying to get out of your own way when you're making something. You show up the most when you're out of your own way, I think. So I guess that's why. Anybody else?
I think there's something about language. I think when you were talking, I was thinking about you were talking about the rain and the name for money being the same, and then I just flashed that oil gusher. I was thinking, oh well, drops of money. Now that's like the drops of oil, the drops of money, and I think I think and then Leisha talked about John's, and John's is all about language, but then that's where, I mean, I know there's slapstick comedy, of course, right? Lucille Ball and Buster Keaton and everything. But so there's a visual comedy, but there's also the comedy of language, which I enjoy. And I think the titles of Mary's paintings are so funny. And I do think that there's something in that humor, a wordplay in all the work.
So we'd like to open it up to audience, and we'd love to have questions. And so do anybody have any questions of these artists and some of the issues? Yes.
I have a question about spirituality. You know, John mentioned the kind of secret of the work, and particularly with Mary Weatherford's work, it seems like there's a strong pull towards the transcendental, particularly Midnight Union Hour, you know, which has this sort of black cave.
Such a bad boy. Go ahead.
And the neon light. And, you know, Tom was talking a little bit about, you know, death and all these huge issues that as human beings we confront with. And I'm just interested that wasn't mentioned by anyone. And I wonder if it's still kind of a bad joke for the dinner party. No one's allowed to mention spirituality.
No, that's totally, you got it right there, but it's only 10 minutes, so, you know, you always go, ooh, I forgot to talk about that. But I don't know, maybe it's like, you know, I made a painting a few years back called, it was a painting of a cave called The Spiritual in Art. And, okay, so Mary's just going to keep winning and winning. Yeah, okay. So my dad's an Episcopal priest, right? So I just grow up with these stories, right? The stories that, and of course, like those Ruby paintings are Barnett Newman, and then I'm so interested in the Stations of the Cross that Newman painted that's in the modern, and those are the Stations of the Cross, and then sort of like, you know, and that glass is repurposed from the Thrifty Mart in Bakersfield. It hung on the outside of the Thrifty Mart, and so then that's the, like, it just like slays me that it's the Thrifty Mart Stations of the Cross. Like, it's the, and then what really kills me is like those people coming up over the Tehachapi Pass and looking down and going, this is the promised land. And it is definitely not, does not turn out to be. You know, and that's all in those paintings, all in those paintings, like hope and failure, and like how many people like died of that dust pneumonia, breathing in that, because we made a mistake in farming. We dug up all the grass, and then the winds came along and blew it all into the Atlantic Ocean, and people died because of a mistake, because we thought we were going to make a lot of money farming this desert. Turned out to be a desert after all, because the rain went away. Anyway, so all this, the like hope and failure and hope and failure and hope and failure, I wanted to contain in those paintings. So you're right. Yeah.
Anyone else? Yes, Mary.
I wondered if several people mentioned relational aesthetics, and I wondered if you all see that as meaning the same thing. If you could say a little bit about what each of you means by that.
You know, I'm not a theory geek at all. I have to call up other people and find out what it's all about. But what it means for me is that the art is not just inside of the frame, that it involves the conversations that the people around it are having, and that is much the content as what's inside the frame. It's for me.
To me, it's ideology. It's what you're in when you're doing it, and what you're in is what basically what everybody else is in. Maybe this is not new at all, but to me it's kind of new to start thinking that that I kind of had it wrong for so long that, like, if I looked deeply enough inside of me, I'd find myself or something like that, or any object. But I'm thinking more and more that it's not that way. We're just like a house of mirrors, and so it is a reflection of like what everybody else is doing and how they're thinking about you that makes you. So, like, a quick example: if you're standing on a street corner and it's slippery, and somebody else slips, you say "oops," kind of at the same moment that they are. So, anyway, that's what I think this topic is about.
Cool. I mean, I think, yeah, in some way, at least for me, when I do make my work, I am thinking about the viewer, because I put together 10 big canvases end to end in a room, and it is what I was saying. It's countering this frontal vision. I'm more interested in peripheral vision. How do you kind of take in the environment? It's not really, at least for me, it's not about an intersubjective exchange between viewers, which originally relation aesthetics was trying to go for, as well as ideology and all this other theoretical nonsense. But it is about a relation of the viewer to the space and the images. Not, oh, there's this black guy's doing this, but there's about 10 canvases looking at you as well, because we go to museums and we all do it. I don't look at a painting for more than 5 seconds. I can't do it. And that's kind of the program that the museum does. It puts 15 paintings in one room. I mean, for fuck's sakes, who's going to look at 10 paintings in one room? So.
Well, that's the great thing about the chairs. That's the solution to that, because then you get to sit in the chair and then go around. Look at this. But I'm interested in the different ways in which you create representation, because you showed us the glass paintings, right, that have this, the dark line is dark, and they're kind of built, and those are so different, and I don't care if, Tom's work is different one, the other, but what I'm interested in is, wow, there are these two different ways of representational painting. One that's, kind of carrying the modernist flag, right? And then the other that's seemingly coming out of like magazine illustration. And can you talk about that illustrative way of painting and what kinds of viewers prefer one to the other, and if you're interested in that as an effect or that the paintings have with the viewer?
I think I think illustrative, and I guess also the word I used was diagrammatic, right? To kind of show something, but. As some people say, we do, as artists, have to entertain. And this is something that my mentor always said. She always said, we are in the entertainment industry. And I think at some point, the work can be critical and so forth, but you have to entertain. You have to make an excruciatingly beautiful experience or object or what have you. So I think part of how I make the image, it has to somehow hold the viewer's attention just for 5 seconds. That's all I can hope for, to kind of occupy just a look. So it has to somehow represent something that is kind of familiar to a viewer, that kind of illustrates a relationality in terms of how we think of people in space. So I think. That's a fantastic question. I think I have to take that home with me, because I haven't thought about it, that clearly, yeah.
Yes, over there.
So I have a question that's actually about vision, how vision works in the present. One way that scientists actually talk about forms of attention that are provoked by the internet is to describe them as saccadic. Which just basically means jumpy or moving quickly from place to place. And I'm just wondering how you think about this as something to be engaged or resisted or what?
You mean the jumpiness?
Yeah, jumpy, distracted, jerky. It's our eye moves in a very different way than it did.
Geary talked a lot about that, about the shape or the, right? Isn't that like a big de Kooning thing?
Maybe it's a slipping club surfing.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's the same stuff that's been going on.
Yeah.
It's just a sort of another form of reality, looking like into the computer. Like, I'm an old dude, so like there was a whole bunch of times they had no computers, and all of a sudden there was one. And I remember the first like week of looking in there, my brain felt different. I mean, it's like you could feel it, and now I've forgotten. But and some people, most people now are just like, you're born with the way that looks in there. So I don't know. It's just another one of the many ways. I didn't get to talk about it in my presentation, but like one of the last paintings is it's all about all the different forms of looking and seeing, how it turns from looking into seeing. So this is just another window into that.
Victoria.
I have an inquiry for Tom. There was something that you said that really struck me, and it must have hit some kind of a personal chord. You said so that your taste doesn't get in the way. And I took that to mean, like, for me what it meant was that taste is sort of a low self and the concept is sort of a high self. You know, they're like, I don't know, antagonistic to one another.
Yes.
Is that what you meant?
Yeah, I like that we have both of those in there, but if it only hooks up on taste, then maybe it's only like sort of pure entertainment or something where like it's doing, I call it the cheap seat.
Right.
Like my taste is the one that like knows how to make something look cool or whatever. But it's bullshit. It's just like, that's the entryway. Like now I'm sitting there looking into the TV or something like that. It's telling you how to look at it and how to see it before you even enter the room. But the important part is like what happens sort of inside the painting or inside the piece. And that starts to hopefully escape taste because, well, for me, I'm sort of blocking all those, all that sort of easy capacity that I have into like a capacity that I'm unaware of yet. And that's where like the real interesting stuff is. But you can't get there if you stop only at your taste and your rules. And like anybody can make a good composition. It's when you're 3, you start understanding what that is. But then you have to ask who's good composition, you know, like who set up those rules. It's a lot of dead people, you know, from like way back. But we sort of got that in Western culture anyway, like what that looks like, as opposed to Eastern culture. So like all those things sort of determine how you see the world. And so I think the nice thing that artists do is like they start asking people, basically asking themselves how to question what that is, which is like your learned behavior, like learned taste. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Someone talk about breaking the picture plate? Because you all kind of work both on and off. Like,
What about cutting up?
Yeah, it's. Can somebody repeat the question?
Oh.
I mean, because we couldn't hear it back here.
Sorry.
The question is, can someone talk about breaking the picture plane?
Would that count, cutting? Because it seems more like you're creating a new space, you know, and because there is literally, like, things don't just fit, you know, like a puzzle. There's always a gap in between, and sometimes, because I don't use a ruler really, I just eyeball stuff. And I guess it's maybe not so much like it's like rupturing it maybe, and like creating, or maybe more calling attention to the space in between, and therefore thinking about like, you know, this, the body a little bit. I think that's what it's about really, is engaging, you know, our interior, exterior. And not that it's has to be this like exact parallel, but I think then that's probably related to also another kind of politic as well, you know.
In some way, did you say that you're like instead of working on the surface?
John,
yeah. Oh, sorry.
instead of working on the surface, it's more as if you're working within the surface?
Yeah, it's like a construction. I mean, it's all of those. And it's even like flipping it over and working on the back, you know. It is kind of a body. Yeah. And so, yeah, it is surface, because it's, you know, I think about them in terms of painting, you know, but I'm constructing something at the same time. So, and it's collage. It's like all of these things. So it's, you know, it's like juggling.
I think that someone also asked me that question, not in that way, but one person went into my studio and asked me, you know, why do you paint? You know, you're from Botswana. You seem like an intelligent guy from Botswana. You know, like, why do you paint? And I thought it was a really strange question. And in my mind, it kind of meant, well, how do you reconcile your relation to painting as someone from Southern Africa? You know, like, I don't have a right to paint, right, because it's too white. And it became an important question for me. You know, how do I reconcile, you know, my relation to this aesthetic? And the way I've thought of it is with the surface. That the surface is always a reminder of rules. And you know, and that reminder of rules for me just basically means, you know, painting is always about how the limits of painting can always be productive. And that's kind of why I paint, is how can I push the limits of painting. And that's why I work, you know, in relation to cinema. At least that's what I tell myself. But it's not, why don't I make cinema? Why don't I make film? Why don't I make performance? You know, no, because the limits of those mediums are not productive enough for what I think I want to do. So I think, you know, the surface always comes with these rules, and it's the limits of these rules that does become very, very productive in terms of, you know, individual practices.
Another question? Yes.
Lacia, you said that you prefer to eyeball it instead of use a ruler, and I'm wondering if you would see that or interpret that as like an autobiographical action. And because in Mary Weatherford, she's talking about how she wants the neon to be not too straight and not too crooked. And I see that maybe a little bit in your personality as well. And so there's like, I think that might be informed a little bit. And then this notion about painting expanded, like I don't know if painting's really changed ever, but it's kind of always the same. I mean, it looks different or whatever, but it's always painting, and but the expanded part might be that we're just becoming more accurate about what we're doing, and that these subtleties or these things that, like how we approach something, or whether we're the type that likes to use a ruler, or whether we have come far enough where we're comfortable with seeing our hand or trusting our eye, or whatever. But I don't know, that these little like subtleties are more what we're expanding on or seeing more. But I'm wondering if you think that that's an autobiographical.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it is very much about kind of being able to notice the nuance, you know, and that's why I was talking about how gray can sort of highlight that. But for my own work, I just down to the comparison between like a cut line versus a stenciled line versus, you know, a more gestural line or a pencil line. What's the difference between like a cut line and a drawn line, you know, with a pencil? I mean, all of those kinds of relationships are so interesting to me, and that's what I get off on, you know. And I don't even know if that, like, not everyone's going to notice that, and so you're picking up on it. But it is something that it's like, maybe that's part of the secret language or something, you know. Those are the secrets that you were talking about, and the sort of specifics, because I think that's when like those kind of technical aspects, and it's completely wrapped up in the way things are applied or the process. Part of the read is completely tied to that. So that's where the meaning gets created, and that's the work we're engaged in, I think. I mean, all to different degrees. But.
Yes, you, on the way back. Go ahead. You go ahead.
So far everyone has talked about your own individual ideals and ways of working and so forth. I'm curious to know what any of you feel about the bigger picture. Like, where are we right now in the art world? Where's painting going? How do you see that? I know that's a big question.
Anyone feel like talking
that? Oh, okay, I got a good thing to say. It's our art practice and being an artist has really gone mainstream in the culture. And I guess it's because of visuals zooming all over the place on the internet. And I hate to, a lot of people know about art where not too many people knew about it before in comparison. And what I think is positive about that and hopeful about that, it's not all just 1%ers buying tchotchkes. It also means that we have some kind of power, and people are looking all over for art, and people, all kinds of people are making art, and it is going to help the world, I think.
That's so sweet.
And there's a question. Yes, you. Yes, you. Yes, you.
You against the wall.
This is a question for Mary HEILMANN related to social practice, and I wanted to know if you could talk a little bit about your including your friends in your painting shows.
The idea of an artist putting their friends into their practice?
Exhibits.
Into shows, yeah. I've done that a little bit. The coolest story about that is this guy, and it's also sort of about outsidery type of people getting big time attention. This guy in New York, Neil Jenny, who's been making genius stuff for, 40 years. And so now he has a show up at Larry Gagosian, and he curated his friends, his collection, which is all his friends, into the show, and it's getting huge. Everybody loves it. So, yeah, that's just an idea about that I love. We get a little power, and that is power if you get and all those people in the Jenny show, they're all kind of outsidery, and that's a compliment.
So I feel like there was this undercurrent theme of continuation, or an end of the road but no end, or a mistake being pushing you to the next thing. I mean, and then repurposing your work. So I was wondering if you guys could talk about the experience or your own experience of finishedness or not. Does that make sense?
We were talking about this last night. I was talking about how many paintings do you throw away, right? We were talking about it at the dinner table. And I said, well, I just keep working on it until it works. And then if it's totally black, then I have to throw it away. I'm sorry, I forgot the question.
Yeah.
The experience or something.
Sometimes it's obvious when it's finished, and then sometimes I go too far and I wish I hadn't.
Sometimes, for me, it's like a title. It comes at the beginning. That's awesome. But sometimes in the middle, sometimes it's the end. Sometimes a year goes by and still don't know what it's called. So it's still sort of. I'm not sure which one of those is finished.
Actually, I don't know if you can answer that question actually, because there's no borders to anything either. It's it just keeps on sort of going. It changes context, and that changes the meaning of it. And so
Well,
there is.
Yeah, I heard that
Rain, please. Bacon's dealers had to go get his paintings out of his studio because he would never stop working on them. They just go take them away and sell them. Right? I think. He never thought they were finished. So the market decided.
Yeah. One more question. Oh, I was just going to add that with my my way of working, that I don't know how they're going to turn out, but I know when I cannot add one more brushstroke to it. There is a point of saturation where it's just like, because I also work with a lot of negative space. It comes down to how you think space is working. So I think for me, I do know, because I do chart out literally, 3-inch brush from this corner to that corner, then that's it. So I kind of know when it finishes, when I can't add any more, and I let it go. Because it's not a precious thing. For me, it's just like writing a sentence. You write the sentence, you put the full stop, that's it.
So we have one more question. There's someone in the back there. Yeah.
I was really interested in what you said a while ago about painting as an entertainment industry, and also with Leisha's. It seems like when Leisha and Tom paint, they're very autobiographical. When Tom makes work, it's about specific things that influenced him in his life. Whereas Leisha, you are more sort of a physically, you use sort of your own physicality to make marks, and it's process oriented. And then some of them are more relational aesthetics. So it seems to me like the real dilemma, the modern dilemma, is there's so many ways to make work. In one instance, it's about catching the viewer's attention for 5 minutes. In another instance, it's sort of having this relationship with Bakerfield community. And then there's the radicalness of an artist locking themselves and himself or herself away in the studio and creating, and through self-exploration, being able to take how they experience life, put it into an object, and create some kind of universal statement that other people could relate to. So I'm just kind of interested in this idea that in the past there was a very specific way to create work, and that it's so expansive coming to the expanded painting idea. How do we navigate that at this time?
So your question is that how do we navigate this
like
huge
field?
field?
I think that's the dilemma, the sort of modern dilemma that we're struck with, is that
right.
It's so open to how, different ways or interpretations.
Well, I'll just say really quickly, I wasn't thinking about how can I make a better painting. Honestly, I was just thinking about how can I make a painting show that the people in Bakersfield will enjoy. And out of that came this incredible idea. And I think that's so cool.
Yeah, it is cool.
It was like just me. I just want them to really like it. I want them to. And I'm like, I know, we'll do this. It'll be so cool. And then it just, like, the whole world opened up to me with my painting. And it was really, because I really wanted, I didn't want to put my stuff on Bakersfield.
I think also part of it, to go back to what Mary was saying, that political work doesn't always seem political. It is about existing. And I think that existence, I've been talking a lot about rules. It does come with rules. As a feminist, there are certain things you're not going to do. Or as a painter, there are certain things you're not going to do. As a performer, there are certain things you're not going to do. So I think as individuals existing with our politics or with just that existence, you already know what you're not going to do. So I think you slowly figure out a way of, this is what I'm going to be doing in this, big field of even fabrication. Some people don't make their own work. They're more architects, and some people need to make their work. You have to put the brush on the canvas and do it. So I think, this existence also crafts your way of, making or figuring out rules or protocols or ways of making or methods, I would say.
I feel like there's also a lot to be revealed in play, like playing and the sort of improvisation, and I feel like that's very much a part. Oh yeah, yeah. So yeah, that seems to me like it's very much a part of being able to get at the perspective or the voice that you're trying to get at. What you were saying. So, yeah.
Well, we'd really like to thank our panelists and.
You guys have done so great, and I just wanted to, so we have a lunch for an hour, and come join us after lunch. And I also forgot to thank all the artists in the symposium, so I'm going to do that now. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really great.